I walked into the cabin that morning with wet hair and my favourite book tucked under my arm, thinking it was going to be another ordinary day at Riverside Summer Camp. The sunlight filtered through the tall pines outside, and I could hear the other girls laughing as they packed their duffels. It was the last day. Parents had started arriving since breakfast, their cars lining up in the gravel lot, trunks popping open to receive sleeping bags, and handmade pottery from arts and crafts. I folded my clothes carefully, smoothing out each shirt before placing it in my bag. My counsellor, Miss Amy, had checked my name off the list that morning. My parents were supposed to arrive by 2 o'clock. By 3, most of the cabins had emptied. I sat on the wooden steps outside, my bag beside me, watching the dust settle as another family drove away. The camp felt different without the noise. Quieter, hollow. I told myself they were just running late. Traffic, maybe. Dad always complained about highway construction. By 5, only 3 of us remained. Miss Amy kept glancing at her phone, then at me, her smile growing tighter each time. She asked if I wanted to wait inside the main lodge. I said no. I wanted to see their car the moment it appeared on the road. I wanted to see them realise they were late and feel bad about it. I wanted them to apologise. By 7, the sun had started its descent behind the mountains. The camp director, Mr. Patterson, walked over with his keys jangling from his belt. He crouched down to my level, his face kind but tired. He asked for my home phone number. I recited it carefully, the way I had memorised it in first grade. He went inside to make the call. Through the screen door, I heard his voice, professional and measured. Then silence. Then more talking. When he came back out, he told me they thought camp ended tomorrow. Tomorrow. I nodded slowly, absorbing this information, as if it were a lesson in science class. They had written down the wrong date. A simple mistake. People make mistakes. But as I sat there in the growing darkness, with the crickets beginning their evening song and the air turning cool against my bare arms, something inside me began to crack. They had not called to confirm. They had not checked the email with the schedule. They had not wondered why I had not texted them that morning to say I was coming home, because they had not been thinking about me at all. Miss Amy brought me a sandwich from the kitchen. I ate it mechanically, tasting nothing. She tried to make conversation about the friendship bracelets I had made, about the canoeing trip where I had spotted a blue heron. I answered in single words. Yes, no, thanks. My mind was elsewhere, replaying every moment of the summer I had called home. Mum had sounded distracted each time, her responses clipped. Dad had handed the phone to Chloe, my younger sister, who had bubbled with excitement about her dance intensive, about the solo she had been given, about the private coaching sessions they had arranged for her. No one had asked about my activities. No one had asked if I was happy. I spent the night in the infirmary on a cot that smelled like disinfectant. Miss Amy stayed with me, sleeping in the next bed, but I barely closed my eyes. I stared at the ceiling, at the water stain shaped like a map of something I could not name, and felt the numbness spread through my chest like frost. The next morning, they arrived. I heard the car before I saw it. Mum's SUV, the silver one she had bought last year because it had better safety ratings for Chloe's carpool. I did not run to meet them. I picked up my bag and walked slowly, deliberately toward the parking lot. Mum got out first, wearing her yoga clothes and oversized sunglasses. She waved, her bracelets jangling, as if this were a normal pickup, as if I had not spent the night alone in an empty camp. Chloe bounded out from the back seat, her ponytail swinging. Liv, did you have fun? I learned a new routine and I can't wait to show you. Dad emerged last, checking his phone, barely glancing up. Sorry, we're late, sweetheart. Got the dates mixed up. You know how it is. I opened the trunk and lifted my bag inside. No one helped. Mum was already telling Chloe about the brunch reservation they had made for 11. Dad was responding to an email. I climbed into the back seat and buckled myself in. The drive home took 2 hours. They spent 90 minutes talking about Chloe's upcoming showcase, about the costume fittings, about the photographer they had hired to capture her performance. I looked out the window and said nothing. At home, I unpacked alone. My room looked exactly as I had left it. The same books on the shelf, the same posters on the wall, the same emptiness. I could hear Chloe practicing downstairs, the music thumping through the floorboards. Mum was on the phone with the costume designer. Dad was in his office on a conference call. I lay on my bed and stared at the ceiling. The numbness had settled deeper now, like sediment at the bottom of a still pond. I understood something in that moment that I had not fully grasped before. I was not important to them. Not in the way Chloe was, not in any way that mattered. I was the responsible one, the one who did not need attention, the one who could be forgotten at summer camp because she would understand. She would be fine. Olivia is always fine. That night at dinner, Mum asked how camp was. "Fine," I said. "That's great, honey. Did you make any new friends?" "Yes." "Wonderful." She turned back to Chloe, asking about her upcoming audition for the regional company. I finished my meal in silence and excused myself. No one noticed when I left the table. No one came to check on me later. I sat at my desk and opened my journal, the one I had kept all summer, filled with observations about the lake and the trees and the way loneliness felt different when you were surrounded by people. I wrote one final entry. They forgot me. And when they remembered, they were not sorry enough. I do not think I matter to them the way I need to matter. I do not know how to make them see me. I closed the journal and placed it in my drawer. The weeks that followed blurred together. School started. I attended classes, completed assignments, participated when called upon. At home, I became a ghost. I moved through the rooms without sound. I ate meals without speaking. I did my homework at the kitchen table while they discussed Chloe's schedule in the next room. When they asked me questions, I answered briefly, politely, giving them nothing to worry about. I was fine. I was always fine. Until I was not. It happened on a Thursday in October. I was walking home from school, taking the long route through the park because I had no reason to hurry. The leaves had turned gold and red, falling in slow spirals to the path. I was thinking about nothing in particular when I stepped off the curb without looking. The car came from the right. I heard the screech of brakes, felt a moment of impact, and then there was nothing. No pain, no fear, just silence. And then I opened my eyes. I was standing in my bedroom, but the light was different. Wrong. I turned slowly, taking in the familiar space, the same posters, the same books, but the calendar on my wall read June. I walked to the mirror. My face looked younger, softer. I touched my cheek, feeling the warmth of skin, the reality of flesh. My heart was beating. I was alive. But I remembered dying. I sat down on the bed, my hands shaking. The memories flooded back. The camp, the forgotten pickup, the months of invisibility that followed. The accident, the darkness. And now, this. I was back at the beginning, the day before I'd left for Riverside summer camp. I had been given a second chance. The realization settled over me like a cloak. I stood and walked to my closet, pulling out the duffel bag I had packed the night before. I unzipped it slowly and removed each item, laying them out on the bed. The shorts, the t-shirts, the swimsuit, the book I had been excited to read. I looked at these objects as if they belonged to someone else. Someone naive. Someone who still believed that doing the right thing meant being treated rightly. I picked up my phone and opened the email from Riverside Summer Camp. The confirmation. The schedule. The pickup date clearly marked for August 15th. I forwarded it to Mum and Dad with a new subject line. Pickup date? Please confirm. Then I made another search. I had been researching summer programs earlier that year before Mum and Dad had chosen Riverside because it was affordable and close. There had been another option. the Cascade Leadership Institute, a month-long intensive program 3 states away for students interested in environmental science and policy. Competitive, prestigious, expensive. I had not applied because I had not wanted to ask for the money. I had not wanted to be a burden. I pulled up the application portal. The deadline had been extended due to a last-minute cancellation. I had 4 days. I spent those 4 days writing the application essays with a clarity I had not possessed before. I wrote about observation, about adaptation, about understanding systems and seeing what others missed. I submitted my portfolio of nature photography from previous summers. I requested a fee waiver and wrote a separate statement explaining my financial situation with honesty and dignity. When Mum came to say goodnight the evening, I submitted everything. She noticed I was not packing for Riverside. "Camp is in 2 days, sweetheart. You should get ready." "I applied to a different program," I said calmly. "The Cascade Leadership Institute. If I get in, I would like to go there instead." Her brow furrowed. "Olivia, we already paid for Riverside and Cascade sounds expensive." "I applied for a fee waiver. If I receive a scholarship, it would only be a flight." "A flight? That's across the country. You are 13. "I will be 14 in September, and I will be fine." She studied me for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Uncertainty, maybe, or surprise that I had made a decision without consulting her first. She told me she would discuss it with Dad. I nodded and returned to my book. 3 days later, I received the acceptance email. Full scholarship, need-based travel grant, admission to the advanced ecology track. I printed the letter and brought it downstairs. Dad was at the table with his laptop. Mum was chopping vegetables for dinner. Chloe was at dance practice. I placed the paper between them and waited. Dad read it first. His eyebrows rose. "This is impressive, Liv." Mum read over his shoulder. "It is, but it is so far away, and for a whole month." "I would like to go," I said quietly. "I understand if you prefer I attend Riverside, but this is a better opportunity for me." They exchanged a glance. Some wordless communication I could not pass. Finally, Dad nodded. "If this is what you want, we will make it work. I am proud of you for taking initiative." The words should have felt good. They felt empty, because I knew they would have been just as content with me attending Riverside. This praise was not about seeing me. It was about checking a box. Good daughter. Self-sufficient. No trouble. I smiled anyway. "Thank you." The Cascade Leadership Institute was nothing like Riverside Summer Camp. We lived in cabin clusters on the edge of a national forest. The days began with trail surveys and ended with data analysis. We studied watershed systems, wildlife corridors, forest fire ecology. We learnt to use GPS and GIS mapping software. We conducted genuine research that would be submitted to the Park Service. The other students were brilliant and driven. They asked questions I had never considered. They challenged my assumptions. They saw me not as the quiet girl who could be overlooked, but as a colleague. For the first time in my life, I felt awake. I called home once a week as required by the program rules. The conversations were brief. Mum asked if I was eating well. Dad asked if I needed anything. Chloe was always at practice or a rehearsal. They never asked about my research. They never asked what I was learning. When I tried to tell them about the elk population study I was assisting with, Mum interrupted to remind me about Chloe's showcase in 3 weeks. "You will be back in time, right? She is really hoping you will be there." "I will be home on the 18th, I said. "The showcase is the 20th. I will be there." Perfect. She has been working so hard. This is such a big moment for her. I ended the call and sat on the cabin steps, watching the stars emerge above the pines. My roommate, Hannah, came out and sat beside me. "Family?" "Yes." They sound excited to hear from you. I smiled slightly. They are polite. Hannah laughed. Fair enough. My parents are the same way. They mostly want to know I am not dead. But there was affection in her voice when she said it, a lightness. She knew she was loved even when she was away. I knew I was not forgotten only because the program required weekly calls. There was a difference. The month passed too quickly. On the final day, we presented our research findings to a panel of Park Service rangers and university professors. My team had documented a shift in grey wolf territory boundaries and correlated it with changes in prey migration patterns. The presentation went well. One of the professors asked for my contact information, suggesting I apply to their undergraduate program when the time came. I accepted her card with steady hands and genuine gratitude. When I boarded the plane home, I felt the weight of return settling over me. I was going back to being invisible. Dad picked me up at the airport, alone. "Where is everyone?" I asked as I loaded my bag into the trunk. "Your mother is at Chloe's final dress rehearsal. Big day tomorrow." "Today is the 18th. Tomorrow is the 19th. "Right, but the rehearsal could not be rescheduled. You understand." I sat in the passenger seat and watched the highway unfold. At home, Mum hugged me briefly before launching into a detailed account of Chloe's costume drama and the photographer's lighting concerns. Chloe herself was too nervous to eat dinner, running through her choreography in the living room over and over. I unpacked in my room, putting away clothes that smelled like pine smoke and mountain air. I found the collection of field notes I had compiled, the photographs I had taken, the recommendation letter the lead researcher had written for my future applications. I placed them carefully in my desk drawer. No one asked to see them. The showcase was held in the downtown theatre, the one with red velvet seats and gold-painted balconies. We arrived early. Mum fussed with Chloe backstage while Dad saved seats in the third row. I sat between them, my hands folded in my lap, watching the other families arrive. They held bouquets and cameras. They buzzed with excitement. When the lights dimmed and the performance began, I watched my sister dance. She was good, technically proficient, graceful. She had worked hard and it showed. When her solo came, Mum grabbed my hand and squeezed it, her eyes glistening. Dad leaned forward, recording on his phone. The audience applauded enthusiastically. Chloe beamed under the stage lights, soaking in the attention she had earned. I clapped until my palms stung. Backstage afterward, there were flowers and congratulations. Chloe's dance teacher praised her dedication. Other parents complimented Mum and Dad on raising such a talented daughter. I stood to the side holding Mum's purse, waiting for the moment to pass. An older woman, someone's grandmother, approached me with a kind smile. "Did you perform tonight, dear?" "No, Mum. My sister did." "Well, you must be very proud." "I am." "And what do you do?" The question surprised me. "I study ecology. I just returned from a research program." Her eyes brightened. "How wonderful! What kind of research?" I told her briefly about the wolf territory study. She listened with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions about methodology and findings. We talked for several minutes before Mum called me over to take a family photo. I excused myself and joined my parents and sister, arranging my face into a smile. The photo was taken. The night ended. We went to dinner at Chloe's favourite restaurant. She talked about the performance, about which parts went well and which mistakes only she had noticed. Mum and Dad reassured her that she had been perfect. I ate my pasta and said little. When the waiter brought dessert menus, Mum suddenly turned to me. "Oh, Liv, we never asked about your camp. How was it?" It was not camp, it was a research institute. "Right, sorry, how was it?" "Informative. I learned a great deal." "That is wonderful, honey. Did you make friends?" "Yes." Good, good. She turned back to Chloe and the conversation returned to dance. I excused myself to the restroom. I stood at the sink, washing my hands slowly, looking at my reflection. The girl in the mirror looked calm, composed, unaffected, but beneath the surface, I felt the shift completing, the final thread of expectation severing. I had returned from Cascade hoping, despite everything, that they might ask real questions, that they might see the change in me, that they might notice I had become someone new. They had not noticed because they had never truly looked. I dried my hands and returned to the table. The weeks that followed established a new pattern. I attended school, I joined the environmental club, I began volunteering with the county parks department on weekends, assisting with trail maintenance and educational programs. I applied for a mentorship with the professor from Cascade, who had given me her card. When I needed rides to these activities, I arranged them myself through carpools or public transit. When I needed permission slips signed, I placed them on the kitchen counter with a pen. Mum and Dad signed them without reading the details. I did not mind anymore. I had stopped expecting them to be curious. I had stopped waiting for them to ask. I built a life that did not require their attention, and in doing so, I found a kind of freedom. I was not invisible by their neglect. I was independent by choice. Chloe was accepted into the regional dance company in November. The celebration was elaborate. Dinner at the nicest restaurant in town, a cake with her name in frosting, relatives calling to congratulate her. I smiled and hugged her and told her I was proud. I meant it. Her success did not diminish me, but the contrast was stark. When my mentorship acceptance letter arrived, I opened it alone in my room and allowed myself a quiet moment of satisfaction before filing it with my other documents. No cake, no phone calls, no celebration, because I had not told them I had applied. December brought the first snow and the environmental club's fundraiser for trail restoration. I had organised the event with 2 other students, coordinating with local businesses for donations and designing the promotional materials. The turnout was excellent. We raised $3,000. The local newspaper sent a photographer and ran a story the following week with a photo of our team holding the ceremonial check. Mum saw the article when a neighbour mentioned it. She brought it up at dinner, her voice bright with surprise. "Liv, Mrs. Chen showed me the newspaper today. You were in it. Why did you not tell us?" "It was not important," I said. "Of course it is important. This is wonderful." "Right, honey?" Dad looked up from his phone. "What is?" "Olivia organised a fundraiser. It was in the paper." "That is great, Liv. Very responsible." He returned to his phone. Mum's smile faltered slightly. She looked at me with something I could not quite identify. Guilt, perhaps, or the beginning of awareness. But the moment passed quickly, and the conversation moved on. I cleared the table and washed the dishes. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time since my rebirth. I have built something they cannot see, and that is exactly right. I do not need their validation anymore. I needed it once, desperately, and its absence nearly destroyed me. But I am not that girl anymore. I am someone else entirely. Someone who knows her worth does not depend on their attention. Someone who can thrive in the space they overlook. I closed the journal and turned off the light. The turning point came in February. Chloe injured her ankle during rehearsal. A bad landing. The doctor said she would need 6 weeks of rest and physical therapy. She would miss the spring performance season. The news devastated her. She cried for days. Mum took time off work to drive her to appointments. Dad rearranged his schedule to be home more. The house revolved around her pain, her recovery, her disappointment. I continued with my routines. One evening, Mum found me at the kitchen table working on a scholarship application for a summer program even more competitive than Cascade. She sat down across from me, her face tired. You are always working on something, she said quietly. I have goals. I know. You are so self-sufficient. You always have been. I looked up from my laptop. Is that what you think? That I have always been this way? She blinked, confused by my tone. Well, yes. Even when you were little, you never needed much attention. You entertained yourself. You did your homework without being asked. You were easy. Easy, I repeated. I mean that as a compliment, Liv. You are responsible and capable. I saved my document and closed the laptop. Do you remember when you forgot to pick me up from camp? Her face changed. That was a misunderstanding. We had the date wrong. You had the date wrong because you did not check, because you were not thinking about when I was coming home. That is not fair. We made a mistake. You made a mistake, I agreed. And when I came home, you did not apologize in any meaningful way. You did not ask if I was upset. You did not notice that something had changed in me. Her hands twisted together on the table. Liv, where is this coming from? I am not angry, I said calmly. I am simply telling you what happened. You forgot me. And in that moment, I realized I was not a priority to you. Not the way Chloe is, not the way I needed to be. That is not true. We love you both equally. Love and attention are not the same thing. Silence settled between us. Mom's eyes filled with tears. I did not realize you felt this way. I know, I said gently. That is part of the problem. You did not realize because you were not looking. She reached across the table as if to take my hand, but I stood gathering my materials. I am going to finish this in my room. I left her sitting there. Dad came to my room later that night. He knocked softly before entering, which was unusual. He sat on the edge of my bed while I continued typing. Your mother is upset. I know. She feels like she failed you. She did not fail me. She simply did not prioritize me. There is a difference. He was quiet for a long moment. I did not realize we had made you feel invisible. I do not feel invisible anymore, I said, meeting his eyes. I made sure of that. He nodded slowly. The research program, the volunteering, the scholarship applications, you have been building something. Yes. Without our help? Yes. He rubbed his face with both hands. I am sorry, Liv. You deserved better from us. The apology landed differently than I expected. Not with satisfaction, not with vindication, just with a quiet sense of acknowledgement. He had finally seen it. They both had. But it was too late to change what had already happened. Too late to rewrite those months of invisibility. They could only move forward, and so could I. Thank you, I said. He stood to leave, pausing at the door. For what it is worth, I am proud of you. Not because you are easy, because you are exceptional. After he left, I sat very still. The words should have healed something. They did not, because I no longer needed them to. March brought acceptance letters, the summer program I had applied to, the mentorship extension, the competitive scholarship for high school juniors interested in environmental policy. I received all three. I celebrated quietly, treating myself to coffee at the bookstore cafe and a new field journal. When I came home, Mum and Dad were in the living room with Chloe, who was showing them her physical therapy progress. I placed the acceptance letters on the coffee table. I have some news, I said. They looked up. I explained each opportunity briefly, factually, without embellishment. Mum's eyes widened. Dad leaned forward reading the letters. Chloe smiled genuinely, saying it was cool. This is incredible, Liv, Mum said. When did you apply for all this? Over the past few months? Why did you not tell us? I did not need help with the applications. The statement hung in the air. Not cruel, just honest. Dad cleared his throat. Well, we are very proud. This is major. We should celebrate. Dinner? Your choice of restaurant. That is not necessary. We want to, Mum insisted. Please, let us do this. I considered refusing, but I saw something in her face that made me pause. Regret, real regret, and a desire to repair what had been broken, even if the pieces could not fit together the same way. All right, I said. Saturday night. Saturday came. We went to a nice restaurant, but not Chloe's favourite. Mum asked detailed questions about my summer programme. Dad wanted to know about my research interests. Chloe asked if I would see any bears. I answered each question patiently, watching them lean in, watching them try. It was not the same as if they had been present all along, but it was something. When the waiter had brought dessert, Mum raised her glass of wine. To Olivia, for her incredible achievements and her determination. We clinked glasses. I looked at their faces and felt a complicated mix of emotions. They were trying now. They had noticed me. But it had taken my absence, my independence, my construction of a life they could not ignore for them to see me. The daughter they thought was easy had simply been unseen, and the girl I had become in my rebirth had refused to accept that invisibility. The next week, Mum started attending my volunteer days at the park. She claimed she wanted to learn more about conservation. Dad asked to read my research papers. Chloe, still recovering, asked if she could come to one of the environmental club meetings. I allowed all of it, but I kept my distance emotionally. I had learned to protect myself by not expecting their attention. Receiving it now felt strange. Welcome, but belated. In April, Chloe returned to dance. The house's energy shifted back toward her. The physical therapy appointments became practice schedules. The dinner conversations returned to choreography and auditions. I noticed the pattern re-emerging, the familiar gravitation toward her orbit. But this time, something was different. Mum caught herself mid-sentence one evening. I am doing it again, aren't I? Talking only about Chloe. I looked up from my homework. It is fine. No, it is not. Liv, tell us what you are working on. I told them about the watershed study I was designing with my mentor, about the proposal I was submitting to present at a regional conference. They listened, they asked questions, and when I finished, Mum did not pivot back to Chloe. She simply said thank you for sharing, and the conversation moved to other topics. Small progress, incremental change, but change nonetheless. May brought my 14th birthday. In my previous life, it had been overshadowed by Chloe's end-of-year recital. The celebration had been a quick dinner, a store-bought cake, presents opened hastily before everyone left for the theatre. This time, when the day arrived, Mum had planned a full day. Breakfast at my favourite cafe, a hike in the state park, dinner at home with extended family, cake made from scratch. Chloe's recital was the following week. The separation was deliberate. I blew out the candles and made no wish. I did not need to. I had already reclaimed everything that mattered. June arrived. School ended. Chloe's recital came and went. She performed beautifully. I cheered for her sincerely. The difference was that I no longer measured my worth against her achievements. Her success did not diminish mine. Her spotlight did not cast me in shadow. We were simply two sisters with different paths. The week before I left for my summer programme, the family drove to Riverside to drop off Chloe. She had chosen to attend the camp this year, wanting a break from intensive training. As we pulled into the familiar gravel lot, I felt an odd sense of completion. The cabins looked exactly as I remembered. The pine trees, the lake, the wooden steps where I had waited. We helped Chloe carry her bags to her cabin. Mum hugged her goodbye. Dad reminded her to call. I gave her a friendship bracelet I had made, the kind I had created in my previous life, and told her to have fun. As we walked back to the car, Dad draped his arm around my shoulders. Nervous about your programme? No, excited. You have come so far this year, Liv. I know I did not notice all of it as it happened, but I see it now. I looked back at the camp one final time. Somewhere in those cabins, a different version of myself had felt forgotten. That girl had died in more ways than one, and the person I had become had grown from the soil of that ending. "Thank you," I said. "But I did not do it for you to see. I did it for myself." He nodded, understanding finally that the distance I had created was not punishment. It was self-preservation. It was growth. We drove home in comfortable silence. The morning I left for my program, the whole family came to the airport. Mum cried a little. Dad triple-checked my itinerary. Chloe made me promise to send pictures. I hugged them all and walked through security without looking back. On the plane, I opened my journal and wrote a final entry. They forgot me once, and it broke something essential. But in breaking, I discovered I could rebuild myself stronger. I do not need their validation anymore. I do not need to be seen by them to know I exist. I have made myself visible through my choices, my work, my determination. And if they have learned to see me now, that is their journey, not mine. My life is my own. My path is my own. And I walk it with clarity and peace. I closed the journal and looked out the window at the clouds below. The plane carried me forward toward summer, toward new research, toward a future I had crafted with my own hands. Behind me, in a house that had once felt like a cage, my family was learning to look at the empty spaces I left behind and recognize, finally, what they had almost lost. But I was not looking back. I was whole now, and that was enough.